Requirement analysis is a very critical process that enables the success of a system or a project to be assessed. Quality is something that you have promised to the client. Quality is no big metrics, but it's just a promise that we have told. So tomorrow, when you become a project manager with any company, this also becomes mandatory. You cannot ignore the non-functional factors at any given point of time. Good morning and welcome to the first session in Unit 2, 5th semester B.Ca Software Engineering, where we're going to speak about functional versus the non-functional requirements. Now, as we talk about a project system in the organization, what is very important is that have you analyzed the requirements that are needed for the project? So starting here, requirement analysis is a very critical process that enables the success of a system or a project to be assessed. For any of the project today, you need to understand what are your requirements. You might be qualified, you might have the experience, you know about the project, no doubt about it, but nevertheless, you exactly need to know what is your requirement. And once you know your requirement, you know that you can split it into functional and non-functional. So that's what we are going to take a deep dive today to understand what is functional and the non-functional. Now, understanding and distinguishing between the type of requirement is essential for success of any projects. 90% of the time, a project fails because you have not understood the exact requirement. People try to overestimate or people try to underestimate, sometimes saying that this is what I have done in the last 10 years, so I exactly know what to do. But then the customer out there wants a different set of requirements. So what is the success of the project? That determines by understanding the criticality of the requirement. So let's get into that criticality where we have to go on a comprehensive design pattern, try to understand, apply the two words called as knowledge and skills effectively. So when you combine knowledge and skills and you understand what exactly the customer out there wants it, automatically your project turns out to be a success. Moving further, let's try to understand the importance of functional versus non-functional. So I've got two words here. Both of them might look similar, but then there is a difference. Let's try to understand the extended factor, the difference between the functional and the non-functional factor. Now, moving further, functional, what do you mean by that word? That means to say the requirements that the end user specifically demands as basic facilities. All of us belong to a generation called as the mobile or the internet generation. Probably whenever you use your mobile, you expect every single app to function in a particular manner. The moment the system hangs or you're not able to get to the end of the application, you get irritated because as an end user, you always feel that the functionality is not properly mapped. So coming back, when a user is not able to get satisfaction out of the facilities that are mapped out in any of the given structure, then automatically you're missed out on the functional requirements. So functionalities are one that needs to be necessarily, mandatorily available at that juncture, at that point. That makes that system a part of the contract, which means to say that you cannot at any point of time take it lightly or avoid it. You need to have those functions because they are pretty much basic. Without that, the app will not be able to function. Moving on, they are represented or stated in the form of input given to a system. That means to say the operation performed and the output expected. Now, this is very, very simple. Why? Because let me just take you back to the classroom for a while. When we were in our small classes right now in the kindergarten kind of thing, when the teacher used to say A, automatically the children will say A for apple, and that's an expected output. So similarly, here in the operational sector, when an input is given, automatically you expect an output. So moment I use the word login and password, automatically the next button should be submit. Moment I do it, then I get an output there. So if that expectation is not matched, then functionally we are breaking out somewhere. So this is why the requirements by the users, which can be seen directly in the final product, unlike than the non-functional. So coming back, functional requirements are those basic needs that needs to be there in the software. You cannot avoid it, you cannot take it lightly, and the expected outcome has to exactly match the client requirement. In any of this condition, if you are losing it out, then we are not going to match the system, and that's where it becomes complicated. Following which, the functional requirement, let's just have a quick look into the example. What are the features that we need to design for the system? Look at the fundamental question. What are the systems that we need? The features that we need here. That's exactly a fundamental question. Why? Because you are getting right to the nuts and bolts of the question. Moment you start studying a course, the first thing that comes to you is that what is the syllabus? What is this course all about? So when I say B.Ca, that means Bachelor's in Computer Application. So in moment it strikes, what am I going to study? I'm going to study about computer. What in computer? Certain applications. What kind of applications? Is it software? Is it hardware? Is it going to be about networking? Is it going to be about database? So immediately I'm deep diving into the very fundamental question of what we need to study, how we need to study, and what are the essential factors. Moving further, what are the edge cases that we need to consider in our design? Look at the word edge cases. Now, for every single project, there needs to be another model or an example to follow, which is quite difficult. Why? Because if I'm doing a project today, I need an example to follow. I'm not going to copy the example, but I'm going to make something similar to the example. So that's why I use this word edge cases. A case in software will try to replicate some of the functionalities, will try to understand what are the similar features, erase out the differences, and try to understand how we can replicate certain things which are essentially built in as a process. Followed by which, let's again talk about the non-functional. The moment I say non-functional, people might take it lightly, but nevertheless, let's get into it. Why? Because they are the quality constraints that a system must satisfy accordingly. Now, the word quality is a very, very important term. Why? Quality is something that you have promised to the client. Quality is no big metrics, but it's just a promise that we have told. The moment you take a brand today, let it be Nike, let it be Puma or Adidas or any kind of brand, moment when people buy that brand, there's a promise behind it that yes, that brand will look good on me. If I wear a Rolex watch today and I walk on the streets, people ask me about that watch because Rolex has got a promise towards its customer saying that I will deliver the best in your hands in terms of showing the time. Similarly, quality is a factor that is inbuilt, that is already promised. So you cannot go back on the word quality. So whenever you are doing a project, you need to satisfy all those factors, and the priority that goes inside in terms of doing that particular project, in terms of concluding that project, varies from time to time. But what cannot be compromised here is that taking the things lightly, saying that it's non-functional, so I don't have to worry. That might not be needed. I'm only a technical guy. I work on my Java, I work on my .NET, I work on my C++, or I work on any other functionality languages. I know the R programming or the Python, so I will just keep working on my technical factors will not be taken into account. What would be taken into account is that you need to take on the portability, you need to understand the security of these features, plus the maintainability. So tomorrow, when you become a project manager with any company, this also becomes mandatory. You cannot ignore the non-functional factors at any given point of time. The priority is very, very clear, and we have to see that this is also a part of the project. Followed by which I'm going to talk about certain words which are very, very important for the project. So let's start with the word called reliability. Now, what is reliability? I would use the word as dependability. So when I rely on that software as a customer, as a client, I know that this software will deliver what I expect. That's what I call as reliability. So today, when I'm working on a system, the reliability of the system is 100% to me. Why? Because my business is based on this. If, for example, I'm Amazon, and Amazon's dependability on their app is very much high. Why? Because every customer interacts with the company through that app. Everybody books their orders through that particular app. So if the app does not deliver the function, the reliability towards the project starts falling down. So reliability is the prior important function where I depend on it. Second thing, scalability. 20 years or 30 years back when Amazon started a business, they never thought that e-commerce would be such a big boom to this entire world. But today, Amazon cannot look into a world where people don't have a mobile phone with them. Every single person on this earth might even have multiple mobile phones, which means to say that the operational factors of a project has gone up several fold times. So scalability, how far you can expand the scope of your business is what I'm talking as scalability here. So scalability is important. Why? Because that's how you can increase your project day by day, serve millions of customers across the world. Performance, I don't have to talk about it. Why? Because until and unless you show performance, people are not going to talk to you, which means performance is a set of indicators that have already been kept in place, and you need to match those indicators. Nobody is going to tell you what is performance. Now, for example, if you're running 5 miles a day every day, the next day you start running 6 miles, do you call it a performance improvement? If you believe yes, the answer is yes. But then if you have kept the benchmark as 10 miles and you did only 6 miles, then that's not a performance. You would say that I'm underperformed. So performance is a self-benchmarking institution altogether. You need to understand that how organizations set their standards, accordingly, the app also needs to come forward. Reusability, this is very much important as we are going more towards the eco-driven system. Even the apps also need to be reusable nature where we can use it again and again, and the functionality has to be flexible, which means I don't want to have a rigid static system which cannot be changed at any point of time. I need a system that is flexible, that understands me, that understands the business and adapts to the environment accordingly. With this, we move on to the next one, the non-functional requirements advertisement. Now look at the example here. Each request should be processed with a minimum latency. System should be highly valuable. Now the word latency, for example, what is the time that takes for you when you open up your Google Chrome and you start typing a particular app or a particular name altogether? Imagine, let's say that Google takes about 1 hour to give an answer to you. You're not going to look into that software again. You need answers in nanoseconds. You don't need answers that can keep waiting you for hours together. So latency is an important factor here. You don't make the customers wait. You don't make the customers feel that I will be serving you only tomorrow. You rather make the customer that you are important to me and I will serve you the very minute you ask for that query. So latency cannot be taken as a very serious, a light factor here. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be taken in very, very seriously. And it's a highly valuable factor. System should be highly valuable. So when people look into your system, when people look into your process, it needs to create value in their business. It needs to add certain importance to their business. Now, the extended requirements, these are something which are basically nice to have. Let me even go with that word. Always when people say, what is the good thing that goes with a cup of tea? Naturally, biscuits. So similarly, nice to have. But that doesn't mean that that's going to replace the coffee or tea. The coffee or tea remains the primary business. The biscuits are just nice to have. They're just complementary goods here. So similarly, extended requirements are nice to have for me. So these are the things which are out of scope of the system. But then, if you add it to that, I'm not going to say no to it. It's just going to give me an added value, an added presence in the market. So our system should record the metrics and analytics. Okay, we are coming into that factor. Health and performance monitoring. So I'm trying to make myself even more extended myself out of the things, trying to say that this is good enough. Let me just share a very small example with you. We are all again in the world of smart watches which try to count each and every activity that we are doing today. But when you really look into the purpose of smartwatch, other than looking into the time, probably we don't have time to look into how much is our heartbeat or how much are we running, how many steps we have taken, what's going to be our BP, what's going to be our system. But then people are getting more and more advanced into it. Why? Because they feel sometimes a smartwatch is not just a smartwatch, but a smartwatch is something that just controls the human body. So similarly, it is nice to have. So when I have the most advanced smartwatch on my wrist, I just feel it's nice to have. Moving further with this, I come to the end of this particular session. I hope and believe that all the factors that I have spoken here would be of a great value to you, both in terms of theory and in practical walk of life. In the upcoming sessions, we would be talking more about the values of software engineering in terms of requirement analysis and gathering. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.